Hugo the Boss Centeno, thank you very much for coming on to TheBoxingBar.com, my friend, and welcome, man.
Thanks for having me again, bro. It's been a minute.
Damn, it's been a bit. The last time I remember, I think having you on was maybe 2013, 2014, and time
Yeah,
flies, man.
man.
And a lot of things has happened with you, I'm sure, personally and professionally since then. But let's go ahead and get started, man. And what's going on over there in Oxnard at the moment with all the quarantine and all this stuff going on?
It's been a little tough. Everything's been closed down, and including all the gyms. So it's been a little tough to find sparring and people having their doors open. So as for me, once quarantine hit, I had some bags lying around and a bunch of extra gear. So I went out, bought me a treadmill, an elliptical, a spin bike, and hung up all my bags and just made a little gym for myself and in my garage. And so just been handling business like that for almost a year now.
Well, yeah, your last fight was in December of 2019, and
Yeah.
like you said, you've been keeping in shape or trying to. Do you have anything coming up in the future, in the near future, with fights and all?
I'm currently trying to work out a deal with Lou DiBella, promotional deal, and trying to set something up for mid to end of April, and then just get the ball rolling from there. It's, like you said, I haven't fought since December 2019, and it's been a minute. I got let go from PBC, so I chose not to re-sign with them because my contract came to an end, and I chose not to re-sign with them and just kind of do my own thing. I felt like they weren't moving me the way I wanted them to move me, and they were kind of just focusing on other fighters. So I decided to do my own thing and try to work out deals with other people.
All these fights have been coming on this past year. It's been with no crowd. Do you think that'll affect you psychologically, or do you think that will mess with your mind when should you have to do that and fight with no crowd?
Me personally, I feel like I've been doing this for such a long time that I feel like it won't affect me because just being in the ring in general for me is just second nature, and I feel like I'm at home. So I personally don't think the crowd will affect me. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to fight during COVID, so I can't tell you, 100% that I'm sure that it won't affect me. But just off of my own mindset, I feel like it won't have an effect on me.
I remember a few years back when I got to Chico up here in Northern California, watching one of your fights at a local bar here. And while I was watching, I remember they had like a pre-fight intro, with you, and they had brought up that your dad had just had some kind of major surgery. How's he doing, by the way?
He's doing pretty well, man. He's with me every single day. He comes over to the gym and make sure that training right, and he's always had a close eye watching over me. That time when you got to see that, he had just endured a major heart surgery, and so he since then he's just been getting his health in order, and he's probably down about 40 pounds.
Since I'm always digging into the past, the history of Oxnard and all that, and boxing in Oxnard, I heard his name brought up before. Did he used to fight, and how far did he get in the fight game?
So as far as he just got to the amateurs. That I know of, he just did a couple dozen fights, but he wanted to turn pro. But when his time came to turn pro, he got into a motorcycle accident. And so obviously that prevented him from going pro. And they told him, you know what, if you take any more major blows to the head, I mean, that could be the end of it. So he chose to go a different route and didn't pursue boxing. And well, now he's my coach.
Did he like try to really get you to go into boxing? Was that your choice from watching him? How did that go? Because you hear all the stories of sometimes the dad or the brother that got the brother into the game. They pushed him in there. How did that go for you?
Right. I get you. No, actually, for me, it was kind of the opposite. My dad was trying to strain me away from boxing. But growing up, I was always watching, when they still had Tuesday night fights and Friday night fights. Um, we would just watch the fights all the time. And maybe when I was about 3 or 4, we'd be at the laundromat and he'd just like hold his hands up like I was hitting the mitts. And then when I turned 5, he bought these like old beat up gloves in a garage sale, and then we'd just mess around at the house. But growing up, he always wanted me to play baseball, but I just had a passion for boxing just from watching it and the type of adrenaline that would run through your body. So when I turned 7, I tried to go to a local boxing gym here in town, and then they turned me away. And so they said that I was too young because of insurance purposes or something like that.
Mm.
And so my dad quit his job and started training me full time, and then he started taking on other kids, and slowly he just ended up becoming a head coach at one of the local gyms, and we just kind of took it from there. But he always tried to make sure that I played baseball and did something safe because he understands how difficult it can be to go through the sport.
2013 was probably the year that the last time I had you on, and since then a lot of things happened. I think around that time is when you fought Julian Williams. I believe it was called like a draw or something, or a no contest because of a headbutt. What do you remember about that fight with Julian Williams back in 2013?
I remember there was a lot of animosity between he and I. As there should be because we were both two undefeated fighters, and
Right.
we're fighting on a huge stage, big fight weekend. I believe it was like Mayweather Canelo, I think.
Yeah.
And we're in the middle of the MGM Grand entrance for the hotel, and we're weighing in, and I just felt like all this just it was extremely intense for the weigh-ins, and I was super pumped up. And for the fight, he got off to an early start. He caught me with a few punches, but nothing like I didn't feel like I could handle. And as the fight progressed, I felt him slowing down, and I started landing my jab a little more, and kind of started finding my range. And so going into the fourth round, I was doing well with my jab, and he comes in head first, and we just clashed heads. And the cut happened to be over my left eye, and so the ref comes up, and he's like, "Oh, let me take a look at your eye," and he starts putting up his fingers. I answer his questions, and he says that I can't see from my left eye, and so he calls the fight, and so it's called a no contest. And there's just a lot of stuff that comes with that. A lot of people are saying that I quit and that I don't want to fight Julian Williams because it was off to him winning. But it's like I tell a lot of people, you know what? It's not how you start a fight; it's how you end it. If you
Exactly.
see that you watch a fight, it's this guy slowing down, and I was starting to find my range and catch him. And
Right.
in the pros, it's you shoot for the long game,
Yep.
and he wasn't anywhere near for to knocking me out. So it's hard because that fight never got to unfold, and he stayed at 154, and I moved up to 160, and then so we just never met again. The fans throughout the years they've always egged us on, and they've made it seem more than what it is.
Mm.
And then when he fought Charlo, I saw him at the weigh-ins because I also fought on that card. I believe it was here at the Galen Center, and I saw him, and he comes up to me, and and I was like, "Oh, it's random," because every time he's seen me, he just kind of dogs me out. And so he comes up to me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I just want you to know that I don't hate you. I have no personal vendetta against you. There's no problem between you and I. I feel like the fans just make it more than what it is. The fight unfortunately ended the way it did, but I got no problem with you, man." And we just shook it out, and that was it.
About a year later, you get probably one of your best wins. I remember watching you fight against James De La Rosa, and you dropped him in the first round, knocked him out in the fifth, and I was like, man, I think a lot of people were curious how is he going to come back after this Williams thing, but I think that was probably one of your best performances that I've seen. What do you remember about that fight and how you felt walking into that fight against James De La Rosa that night?
Man, all I remember is James De La Rosa talking my ear off. This guy was just talking through the roof. Like, I had never had an opponent talk so much crap about me. And he was just going on all his interviews about he hopes that I don't get a little cut like I did against Julian Williams because I might quit and just all this nonsense. And like I said it just like Tyson said it. Everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And looking at James De La Rosa, I feel like he has no plan to begin with. So I do my talking with my fist, and this guy just wouldn't shut up. And so I never really talk crap because I feel like I don't have to. Like my performance will do the talking. But man, I just couldn't hold back. So when I finally got to the weigh-ins, I was like 100% sure that the cameras wouldn't catch our audio, and I just started going off on this guy when we came like face to face. And there's a guy, I believe his name is Alan Conyers. I knocked out Alan Conyers, and I didn't find out until right before the weigh-ins that Alan Conyers knocked out James La Rosa. And so I brought it to his attention. I told him, you know what, I'm gonna knock you out just like Alan Conyers did. Now I'm gonna make sure you don't get back up. And he kind of and then that's when Bernard Hopkins stepped in and kind of tried to break us up. It's a pretty intense weigh-in. I think it's somewhere on YouTube.
When you're in the ring, is it hard to not just start, throwing, haymakers and stuff because you just want, like you said, shut them up? How did it feel like being in there, like that last round, or where you saw you got him, where you had him hurt and in trouble?
You know what? I feel like I said, just off of so much experience and just being in there since I was a kid, and because I do feel at home, I never let my emotions get the best of me, and I had the experience to where when I was a younger kid, my emotions would get the best of me, and I would try to fight out of anger, and it would all go wrong for me. One thing would fail, then the next, and then it's like quicksand, and everything begins to fail. So you just need to be level headed in there no matter what. I mean, there's moments where it'll become competitive, and you'll laugh because you're like, man, this is like a great back and forth,
Yeah.
and that's when you'll see like the best of a fighter come out, because they're having a good time.
How did it feel to be like, going with these different promoters, like you said, at one time you were with Golden Boy and PBC, and now you're going to be probably going to develop maybe. How is it between these promoters that you've been through? Like now looking back, is it a good thing that you've kind of tried them all out? Is it a bad thing? What is that like?
It's funny that sometimes even just looking back at everything, sometimes it just feels surreal.
Yeah.
Like all my fights, sometimes they just feel like a dream, like where it just happened in another lifetime. Like I'll go back and look at like just a bunch of things like trophies from when I was a kid,
Mhm.
medals, tournaments that I won, and big fights that I've had, being on world stages and still being able to be announced on HBO by Jimmy Lennon and Michael Buffer and just all these guys that I saw growing up.
Right.
And just to be amongst the elite as a kid, something that I always dreamed of, to be on that stage and to be announced and rub elbows with all the champions. It's just honestly, man, it's a dream come true. That's why I said it feels surreal.
Mhm.
It's like a fairy tale. Like yeah, it's amazing just to be with all these fighters, but to be known as one of these big fighters I mean, it's a big deal, but for me, it's a dream come true.
Right. A couple fights after that De La Rosa fight, you get your first loss against Sulecki. What do you remember about that fight in Chicago and that big fight with Sulecki? A lot of people didn't even like know who he was, but I mean, he had some pretty good credentials. He was a tough fighter. What do you remember about that fight going into that fight?
You know what's funny? Like I can make a lot of excuses, and I did have a rough camp for that fight. But like I feel like when I have lost, I beat myself. And I mean, a lot of people won't understand that because they don't get to see what happens behind closed doors.
Right.
They just see what happens in the limelight,
Mhm.
and they don't see everything a fighter has to go through before they get there. So for me, for that particular fight, I let myself gain a lot of weight, and then it was hard for me to lose it. So by the time I got to Chicago, I still had like 10 pounds to lose, which is a lot, especially for me. A lot of other fighters would be like, "Oh, well, that's a piece of cake," but for me, it was tough because normally when I get to wherever I'm fighting, I'm within a pound or two or underweight. So when I got there, I hadn't eaten for like 3 days by the time I stepped on the scale. So whenever I would get up, I was just kind of dizzy. I could see the little stars. I need someone help me up, and I was so hungry I couldn't even sleep. So I was going through a lot, and then because I came in overweight, they put something on the contract to where I couldn't gain more than 10 pounds, and I had to weigh in again the following morning. So I couldn't even hydrate to feel my best. So when it almost came to fight time, they still hadn't told me what my purse was going to be, and then they told me my purse, and my purse was just extremely low. And so I called my manager and tell my manager, was Al Heyman at the time. I tell him like, "Hey man, what's going on? Like my purse is extremely low, and I'm fighting another guy who's undefeated, who's in the top 10 like I am, and I'm fighting him in his hometown. I mean, what's going on here?" And he's like, "Oh, you know what? Just do well on this one, and we'll get you the next one." And I'm like, "Yes, you said last time." Like this time, I'm going up against a guy who has a killer record, and in his hometown, who's also undefeated. And then you have me on the winning side, but I'm getting paid like I'm on the losing side. I don't understand. And then so he's like, "Oh, well, let Brad call you." And then Brad is one of the matchmakers. And then so Brad calls me, and then he ticks me off, and Like I told that guy pretty much if he was right in front of me at the time, like I would have just knocked him out because he was just being like extremely disrespectful and was acting like he was on the opponent's side instead of fighting for me like he was on my side. So it was just my mindset wasn't there, and I was still struggling to make the weight. And like I said, I could make all these excuses, but at the end of the day, the guy beat me.
So you went in there pretty much with drained and with no passion to actually fight.
Yeah, man. Because at the end of the day, like I feel like I lost all this weight. I've been training hard. I finally get another opportunity that could catapult me to the top, and then it's like I'm gonna get paid like I'm still coming up, like I'm a prospect. And at the time, I'm already, a child world title challenger. And so, if you notice in that fight, like the first 3 rounds, I'm doing great, and then after those 3 rounds, just my energy just dips hard. And even then, I didn't think it was enough for them to stop it because I still felt like I was pretty well, and I could have gone to the scorecards, and at least it wouldn't have been considered a TKO. But that ref stopped it.
Yeah, there was moments I think towards the end there where I would figure like like I'd be thinking to myself, oh man, he needs to start just like jabbing or just moving a lot to finish off the round and finish off the fight. And you just seem to want like not be afraid to exchange there, even though it looked like you needed to take a little break there.
Yeah, man. I just for that fight, I don't think I've ever felt that drained in my life,
Yeah.
and that for that fight, I was pretty bad.
After that fight, you rack up a couple wins, and then you fight Jamal Charlo, which is a very dangerous fighter. There, when you went in there to fight that guy, obviously he was undefeated, and everybody was talking about him. Did you like overlook him? What happened there exactly in that fight with Charlo?
I didn't overlook him at all. You know what? I had an extremely great training camp, and then I had a slight injury, and then they pushed it about a month out so I could recover,
Mhm.
and so it gave me even more time to be ready, and so I was in some of the best shape of my life for that fight,
Mhm.
and I didn't overlook him whatsoever. I feel like if you go back and watch the fight, when he hits me with his right hand, he hits me behind the head,
Mhm.
and that's where I feel like it was a wrap because from there I don't remember anything. Um, But early on in the fight, I mean, I felt like I was using my jab. I was outboxing him pretty easy. But until that, obviously, that second round came, I got a little gutsy because I felt like I had to get the early rounds in the pocket just in case it went to the distance. And so that middle of the second round came, and I feel like he clipped me with a good shot, I believe, with the left hook, and then I was gonna go down, but on my way down, he hits me like right behind the head, and I feel like that's what pretty much ended it.
Right now, he's considered still to be like a real dangerous fighter. A lot of people are like, he's the guy to stay away from. Would you agree with that? Would you say he's a real deal?
Yeah, man. Like, I'm not gonna lie, he's probably one of the most dense fighters I've ever felt, if not the most dense. He's just like I can honestly say he's like hitting a brick wall. I don't even know how he makes 160 because I mean I've sparred with cruiserweights, heavyweights that don't feel that solid, and just his density and in his muscle is just he's a solid guy.
A couple of fight or the next fight up, you get a victory. You're fighting there in Los Angeles. What was it like fighting there in Los Angeles after not fighting there for a while?
It was good, man. I felt like I was at home, especially after not having
Yeah,
the chance to fight at home again.
yeah.
It felt great for me because I had all these people saying, "Oh, well, this guy's only undefeated because he only fights in California and he's from California, so this guy doesn't even want to leave home." And so when they started offering me all these fights like Miami, Connecticut, and New York, and all these just random places, I'm like, "Well, let's do it. I'll show everybody that I could take any person anywhere." So to finally, like after like 3 or 4 years, get a chance to come back to fight in LA, I just felt extremely comfortable, and that feeling like you're at home is there's no other feeling like it.
And the next fight up, you fight a tough guy named Willie Monroe Jr. Pretty tough guy. What do you remember about that fight with Willie Monroe?
Another guy who tried to talk a lot. I also had a great training camp for that fight, and right before it was time to leave, unfortunately, my dad got sick again, and they had to rush him to the hospital. And It's tough because I'm very used to having my dad in my corner, and he's always been there. And so for it to happen on the day that we have to leave, like the day of the weigh-ins, because it was close to home, it was tough for me. And I tried not to let it get to me, but I feel like in some ways it did. So as the fight happened, I feel like Willie got off to a very early start. I probably gave him the first 3 rounds, and then I felt like I started getting my timing, and I started catching him a lot with my overhand right. Um, I don't feel like I won the fight, but I don't feel like I lost the fight. At the end of the fight, I told my brother in the corner, I personally think it's going to be a draw, and unfortunately, it didn't happen like that.
And then in 2019, like we said, in December was your last fight, and you got a draw there with Juan Montiel. I heard you got married, and since you have a family now yourself.
Yeah, man, I actually got married right before I fought Suleki.
Wow, congratulations!
Yeah, so that's right before I went to Chicago, and thanks, man, I appreciate that. And then now I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I have a 7-month-old little boy.
Wow, man. What's Hugo like now with the new change in family and everything? What differences do you see in yourself?
I feel like it's just completely different now. It's like night and day, man.
Oh yeah.
Before it was just always about what do I have to do? What do I have to do? I
Hmm.
got to focus on this for me. And now it's nothing like that. Now it's so what do they need? Well, I mean, how hard do I have to work to provide for them?
Right.
I need to give them a better future, and I need to work hard so they're taken care of and they have clothes on their back, food on the table, and a roof over their head. Yeah, man, and I take care of them full time, so it's definitely not an easy task.
Not at
So
all.
I try to get my workout in the morning, and then if they happen to wake up, then I'll have them in the garage with me until I'm done, because my wife works full time.
2021 just started not too long ago. What do you see yourself accomplishing in 2021 in the sport of boxing?
I personally see myself fighting 3 to 4 times this year, and if the third or fourth fight could be for a world title, I mean, it'd be perfect, man. Even just a small fight to get my feet wet, and then after that, I mean, I'll take on any comers.
And Hugo, I've always said I respect every boxer from the top guy to the low guy. I respect all the boxers, especially from my community, obviously, and I respect the people that have always been good with me. And every time I've asked you to interview, you've always been there, and I appreciate it. It's been a long time, but I'm glad I finally got you back on. And just overall, man, I hope you have a great year, man, and thank you for coming on. And hopefully to talk to you soon. And not wait another 7 years or so before I hear from you again.
Of course, man. Like I said, all you have to do is reach out to me, and I'm always ready and willing to make it happen. I'm grateful that you always keep me in mind and want to bring me back on, man. It really means a lot to me, and your support. I truly appreciate it, man. Because without it, I feel like I wouldn't have that motivation to continue to work out, and that goes for all my fans. I feel like when they see me out on the street or they say I motivate them with my videos, I feel like that gives me that extra fire under me to want to work out harder.
And
So I appreciate all you guys.
you can count me in as one of those fans, man. And thanks a lot. And I appreciate it once again, chap.